My name is Elise Dubois, and at 48 I believed I had weathered every storm life could throw at me. Yet nothing could have prepared me for the day my husband of 20 years, Julien Moreau, stood across from me in a Bordeaux courtroom, coldly demanding €8 million, half of my winery empire, and our family's beloved vineyard, the very land my great-grandfather had planted in 1948. The vineyard wasn't just soil and vines, it was my heritage, my blood, my identity. For 2 decades, I had poured my heart into Château Dubois, nurturing it from a single, struggling vineyard into a thriving €15 million empire. But Julien, together with his lover and my former business partner Claire, believed they could take it all, blind to the years of sweat and dreams woven into every barrel of wine. This is the story of betrayal, cunning strategies, and the fight to protect my legacy in a family drama steeped in greed, deception, and heartbreak. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories. They're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. One document changed everything, proving that no amount of family drama could break a woman who truly knows her worth. I founded Château Dubois at 25, inheriting a crumbling estate from my father, a vineyard burdened with debt and neglect. With a degree in viticulture earned at a small Tuscan university, I transformed the estate into a celebrated winery, crafting award-winning Bordeaux blends and employing 50 devoted staff, winemakers, sommeliers, and marketing professionals who shared my vision. Every vine on our 120-hectare property in rural Aquitaine was more than a plant. It was a living testament to generations of labor, tradition, and pride. Growing up among the rolling rows of grapes, I learned resilience early, discovering that patience, care, and unwavering attention could transform even the most barren soil into something extraordinary. Julien Moreau, the man who would become my husband, entered my life with the charm of a literature professor and the wit of a Parisian intellect. We met at university, where he admired my obsession with the science of wine, a fascination he once called grape nonsense with an affectionate smirk. We married young. Julien seemed content lecturing on French novels while I poured my soul into the winery, often leaving the office late, sleeves dusted with soil, hands stained with grape juice, and heart full of hope. I never suspected that the man who once applauded my passion could one day become a threat. 18 months ago, subtle shifts began to unsettle me. Julien's interest in the winery, previously superficial, became calculated. He started questioning revenue streams, barrel costs, and export contracts, matters he had never cared about before. The first real warning came during a harvest festival. I was supervising the pressing of a new vintage, ensuring each grape met the standards I had cultivated over decades, when Julien sidled up to me, casually glancing at my ledger. "Just curious about depreciation on the oak barrels," he said, tapping notes into his phone with precision. Tone, too measured, too rehearsed, felt like the calm before a storm. For a man who had once dismissed my work with gentle amusement, this sudden scrutiny was alarming. I felt a chill, a premonition that the very foundation I had built, stone by stone, vine by vine, was being surveyed with eyes that no longer loved but calculated. The warmth of our past seemed to fade behind cold ambition, and the vineyard I had devoted my life to became the battleground where betrayal quietly brewed. That moment, I realized that protecting Château Dubois would require more than skill in viticulture. It would demand strategy, vigilance, and an unshakable belief in my own worth. That evening, I caught Julien in the act, his phone camera flashing as he hovered over my office files, snapping pictures of contracts, client lists, and even the deed to our family vineyard. "Organizing taxes," he muttered, but the lie clung to him like a thin, sour wine, and I could taste the deception. My pulse quickened, a mix of anger and disbelief swirling through me. I had spent decades building Château Dubois, and now the man I had once trusted most seemed poised to dismantle everything I had worked for. Suspicion festered, and I confided in Marcel, my childhood friend who had grown into a shrewd, dependable presence in my life and now managed logistics for the winery. We sat in a sunlit corner of a quaint Bordeaux cafe, the scent of freshly baked croissants mingling with the earthy aroma of coffee. Marcel leaned in, voice low but urgent. "Elise, when my ex started digging into my finances, she was already planning her exit," he warned, eyes sharp with experience. His words sank into me like a cold stone. I knew I could not ignore the signs. Acting swiftly, I instructed Marcel to monitor financial activity and hired Sophie Laurent, a former gendarme turned private investigator, to investigate Julien's actions discreetly. Her reputation for uncovering hidden motives without leaving a trace reassured me. Meanwhile, I arranged a meeting with Antoine Bisset, my longtime lawyer and the man who had handled Château Dubois contracts for over a decade. His sharp suit and even sharper mind conveyed a seriousness that matched the crisis at hand. Antoine's advice was precise and uncompromising. "We need to restructure Château Dubois into a holding company, Vignoble Dubois Sorel, and place the vineyard into a family trust accessible only to blood relatives," he explained. "If Julien files for divorce, he could claim half your assets unless we act now." The weight of his words pressed down on me, but I felt a strange clarity. The vineyard, my great-grandfather's legacy, would remain untouchable, safeguarded by law even if betrayal crept into our lives. Without hesitation, I signed the necessary documents transferring the winery's core assets, vines, barrels, equipment, and export contracts, into the trust. Château Dubois itself became a shell company, a facade protecting the heart of my empire. Each signature was a quiet rebellion, a declaration that I would not be outmaneuvered. Then came Sophie's report, a dossier so meticulous and damning that it left no room for doubt. Julien's actions were systematic. Secret meetings with Claire, forged communications with clients, and clandestine attempts to manipulate financial records. The betrayal stung deeper than I had imagined, yet it also galvanized me. I realized that Château Dubois was more than property or profit. It was a testament to resilience, to generations of care, and to my own unwavering resolve. As I reviewed the evidence, a strange calm settled over me. The vineyard, the wines, and the legacy of my family were safe, at least for now. But the battle was only beginning, and I was determined that Julien and Claire would learn that a woman who knows her worth does not cower in the face of greed. Julien had been having an affair with Claire, my business partner of 12 years, for 16 months, a fact I only uncovered after months of careful observation, investigation, and the unrelenting pursuit of truth. The discovery felt like a punch to the chest, a betrayal of both marriage and professional trust. Claire, the woman who had been my right hand in the winery, designing our bottle labels, orchestrating marketing campaigns, and advising on high-stakes client negotiations, had become an accomplice in a carefully orchestrated plot to steal everything I had built. Julien and Claire had been meeting in Parisian hotels, tucked away from prying eyes, whispering plans for a rival winery. Their target, my client list, my trade secrets, and the very essence of Château Dubois, the empire I had nurtured from a crumbling estate into a flourishing €15 million winery. The extent of their deceit was staggering. Claire had meticulously fed Julien's sensitive data over months: profit margins, supplier contracts, cost analyses, and even my proprietary blending techniques. Every note, every spreadsheet, every client detail had been weaponized against me. Julien, who had once described my obsession with wine as grape nonsense, now wielded that knowledge with calculated precision, believing that I would never catch the intricacies of their scheme. They thought I was oblivious, blind to the web of deception being spun right under my nose. The proof arrived in pieces, each fragment more devastating than the last. Hotel receipts tucked into envelopes, emails sent late at night that never reached my inbox, photographs of them laughing over coffee at a Montmartre bistro. They painted a portrait of betrayal so intimate it felt like a knife twisting in my heart. Yet, despite the shock and the anger, I understood that reacting impulsively would only play into their hands. I needed patience, observation, and strategy. My vineyard, my legacy, was too valuable to risk over raw emotion. During this period, I kept my routine meticulously normal, maintaining the facade of business as usual. Tastings, client meetings, export negotiations, I attended every one, smiled, and directed operations with the calm, measured demeanor that had always defined me. But beneath that veneer, I was watching Julien's every move. His late-night calls, supposedly to literary colleagues, became subjects of scrutiny. His sudden conferences in Lyon, his meticulous questioning of my schedule, his peculiar interest in financial statements, all pointed to a betrayal that was as deliberate as it was calculated. Every smile, every excuse, every casual conversation was analyzed for hidden motives, double meanings, and hints of the plot unfolding behind closed doors. Claire, meanwhile, wove her poison subtly into the workplace. Small, seemingly innocuous remarks, questioning my decisions in front of staff, casting doubt on my judgment during team meetings, or suggesting alternative strategies that contradicted my own, were all calculated to undermine my authority. First, I questioned my perception. Perhaps I was being paranoid? But the pattern became undeniable. Their actions were synchronized, like two dancers performing a dark choreography that I had been invited to witness only after it had already begun. Despite the betrayal, I refused to let panic dictate my decisions. I enlisted Sophie Laurent, my private investigator, to compile irrefutable evidence. Every email, every hotel booking, every clandestine meeting became part of a dossier meticulously cataloged and analyzed. Julien and Claire had underestimated one crucial factor. I had the patience to observe, the intellect to interpret, and the resolve to act decisively. Their scheme, built on secrecy and manipulation, was slowly unraveling under the weight of meticulous scrutiny. In the winery, the atmosphere shifted subtly. Claire's attempts to sow doubt met with quiet, controlled resistance. I addressed the staff personally, reinforcing transparency, collaboration, and the integrity of Château Dubois. Each gesture, each conversation was carefully measured to maintain morale while shielding my team from the turbulence that threatened the company from within. I could not allow Julien and Claire's betrayal to seep into the culture I had built with decades of effort. At night, in the solitude of my office, I reviewed the evidence again. Julien's calculated questions, the curiosity about financial records, the subtle digs at my management style, all aligned with Claire's undermining tactics. They had assumed my devotion to the winery would blind me to the personal betrayal, that my focus on growth and reputation would make me inattentive to the dangers lurking in my own home and office. Instead, their actions only strengthened my resolve. I realized that protecting Château Dubois would require not only legal action but strategic foresight, psychological insight, and the capacity to remain several steps ahead. The dual betrayal, romantic and professional, cut deep, yet it also ignited a clarity I had not felt in years. Julien and Claire had treated my life's work as disposable, believing that passion and heritage were mere obstacles in the way of their ambitions. I now understood that their arrogance was their greatest weakness. They had counted on secrecy and manipulation, while I relied on knowledge, evidence, and the unwavering commitment to my legacy. Each morning, I walked among the vines, the very soil that my great-grandfather had planted, and drew strength from it. The grapes, resilient against frost, drought, and disease, mirrored my own determination. Julien and Claire's affair and their schemes were an intrusion into this world I had built, but like the vines, I would weather the storm. Every contract safeguarded, every account secured, every legal strategy in place was a testament to the fact that betrayal, no matter how deep, could not dismantle a woman who understood her worth and refused to yield. And so I prepared, not with vengeance, but with calculated precision, patience, and the certainty that the next move would be mine. Julien and Claire believed they held the advantage, but in reality I was already several steps ahead, ready to defend Château Dubois, my legacy, and the vineyard that had been in my family for generations. Their laughter in Parisian cafes, their stolen moments in Montmartre, and their underhanded plotting were no match for decades of experience, resilience, and a woman who had learned to turn betrayal into a catalyst for triumph. One night, the truth became undeniable. I had been working late, reviewing export contracts in my office, when I heard the faint click of Claire's office door closing down the hall. Curiosity and caution collided. I wasn't about to confront her outright, but I could not ignore what followed. Her voice, low yet sharp, drifted through the thin walls. "Once we get the client list, we'll outbid Elise on every contract. She's too trusting." My blood ran cold. The betrayal, personal and professional, cut deeper than I could have imagined. Claire, the woman who had toasted my successes at every launch party, who had celebrated the opening of our tasting rooms and praised the vintages I labored over for months, was plotting to destroy me. Every laugh we shared, every late-night discussion over label designs or marketing campaigns now felt tainted by deception. Rather than confronting them, I decided on a strategy of calculated patience. I would let them believe they had the upper hand. Let them think that I was naive, that their scheming could quietly undermine me without consequence. I knew, however, that true power lay in timing, preparation, and control of the narrative. Weeks later, Julien served divorce papers at the winery. He handed me a thick envelope as though it were a ceremonial gift, outlining his demands: 8 million euros, half of Château Dubois, ownership of the Vineyard, and 10,000 euros per month in alimony. I did not flinch. I smiled politely, thanked him for delivering the documents personally, and returned to overseeing the press of a new vintage. My calm, composed reaction was the first small crack in the facade they had so confidently constructed. When the case reached the Bordeaux courtroom, the tension was palpable. Julien's lawyer, a smug Parisian named Gerard with sharp spectacles and an insufferable air of superiority, presented the opening argument. He claimed I had built nothing without Julien's emotional support, insinuating that my successes, awards, and reputation were somehow dependent on his presence. Claire sat in the gallery, her posture perfect, smirking, clearly envisioning the new venture she and Julien would launch with my client list and proprietary blends. Their confidence was tangible, a kind of arrogance that had blinded them to the danger they had walked into. I listened silently as their arguments unfolded, noting every nuance, every overreach. Gerard's words, meant to intimidate, only confirmed my approach: patience, meticulous preparation, and the element of surprise. When it was my turn, I agreed to every demand, word for word, tone measured, voice calm. Courtroom murmured in astonishment. Some faces registered disbelief. Julien's eyes gleamed with greed, convinced that he had cornered me. They thought the game was theirs, that they had won before the first move of my defense. Then came the moment they had not anticipated. I rose slowly, walking to the judge's bench, holding a single manila folder. Julien and Claire's expressions faltered slightly, curiosity replacing smugness. I placed the folder before Judge Moreau and opened it deliberately. Inside were meticulously organized documents: the trust papers establishing Vignoble Dubois Surrel, detailing the transfer of the winery's core assets into the family trust, and Sophie Lawrence's comprehensive investigative report exposing both Julien and Claire's affair and the fraudulent attempts to manipulate my company's records. Every hotel receipt, every email chain, every photograph taken in Montmartre and hidden Parisian cafés was catalogued with precision. Courtroom fell silent. Gerard's smirk vanished, replaced by a sudden tension as he flipped through the documents, realizing that his narrative of emotional dependency and marital entitlement crumbled under the weight of evidence. Claire's posture stiffened. Her eyes widened as she recognized that the meticulously constructed illusion of control they had so carefully nurtured had been shattered in a single decisive moment. I spoke clearly, calmly, outlining the structure of the trust, explaining the legal mechanisms that safeguarded the vineyard, and detailing the evidence of Claire and Julien's conspiracy. Each word was measured, leaving no room for misinterpretation, no angle for counterattack. I watched as Julien's face, once so confident, betrayed a flicker of panic. The calculated grin he had worn for months began to crack, replaced by something raw: fear, disbelief, and the realization that he had underestimated me. Judge Moreau leaned forward, reading through the documents with intense scrutiny. He paused at Sophie's report, noting the concrete proof of fraud and the deliberate undermining of business ethics. The gravity of the betrayal, both marital and corporate, became undeniable. Gerard, who had carried himself with the arrogance of a courtroom shark, now struggled to find footing, the prepared arguments crumbling under legal scrutiny and undeniable evidence. As I returned to my seat, I felt a strange calm wash over me. The tension, the fear, the months of uncertainty, all transformed into clarity. Château Dubois, my legacy, the vineyard my great-grandfather had planted, was protected. Julien and Claire, once so sure of their victory, had walked into a trap constructed with patience, intelligence, and foresight. The silence of the courtroom, broken only by the rustle of paper and the scratch of pens, was a testament to the fact that deception, no matter how cleverly executed, could not withstand preparation, resilience, and truth. In that moment, I realized something profound. The vineyard was not just land. It was history, heritage, and the embodiment of a lifetime of effort and love. My empire could be challenged, my trust could be tested, but my worth, my intellect, resilience, and strategic mind was untouchable. Julien and Claire had sought to destroy, to capitalize on betrayal and greed, but they had underestimated the power of a woman who had learned to turn vulnerability into strategy. Courtroom, once a battlefield of intimidation and false claims, had shifted. Power dynamic had inverted. Julien's anger simmered beneath a thin mask of composure, Claire's smirk dissolved into panic, and Gerard, formidable and arrogant, now faced the reality that his legal prowess could not overcome evidence and well-laid strategy. I leaned back in my chair, observing their reactions, feeling the weight of triumph settle over me. In that single moment, the months of planning, the late nights, the consultations with Antoine and Sophie, and the careful orchestration of my actions converged into a decisive victory. Château Dubois remained mine. The vineyard, the estate, and my legacy were secure. Julien and Claire had been exposed, not through confrontation or impulse, but through careful observation, preparation, and the unwavering conviction that truth, backed by intelligence and patience, would prevail. The vineyard was finally locked in the family trust, untouchable by Julien. Every vine, every sun-baked path, and every barrel of wine I had tended for decades now stood as a monument to foresight, planning, and resilience. Château Dubois, the company Julien had thought he could claim, held minimal assets. Most had been transferred safely into the holding company, Vignoble Dubois CRL. For years, I had poured my sweat and soul into this enterprise, and now, in the quiet aftermath of court, all that labor had been shielded from betrayal. I could finally breathe without the weight of impending theft pressing on my shoulders. The judge's expression hardened as she read the meticulously organized documents. "Monsieur Moreau," she said, her voice precise and unwavering, "your claims are based on assets you cannot access. The vineyard, the machinery, the client contracts, all are protected under the family trust. Any attempt to interfere would constitute a serious violation of fiduciary law." Julien's jaw tightened, and for the first time in months, the arrogance that had defined him faltered. His eyes darted to Claire, seated in the gallery, her usual smug smirk replaced by an uncomfortable tension. For months, they had plotted against me, believing my trust and focus on the vineyard would blind me to their schemes. I watched silently, feeling a quiet satisfaction ripple through me, a calm certainty that the empire I had built could withstand the greed and duplicity of the very people I had once loved and trusted. I offered Julien a settlement, 800,000 euros to walk away peacefully. His lawyer, Gerard, pale and scrambling after reading Sophie's thorough report, advised him to take it. Julien hesitated only for a moment, perhaps hoping for a final gamble, but in the end, he signed. Defeated, he left the courtroom without a word, the weight of failure etched into his face. Claire's partnership had already been terminated for breaching fiduciary duty, and in Bordeaux's tightly knit wine community, her reputation was irreparably tarnished. The whispers traveled quickly through tasting rooms, vineyards, and trade associations. Claire's name had become synonymous with betrayal. Within months, Julien had relocated to Lyon, attempting to salvage the rival winery that he and Claire had plotted, only to watch it collapse under mismanagement and lack of credibility. Claire disappeared entirely, her dreams of grandeur evaporating, leaving only the cold lessons of ambition unchecked by morality. In the weeks that followed, I focused on restoration and growth. I reopened the vineyard's old stone cellar, the very heart of Château Dubois, and began hosting tastings for loyal clients and wine enthusiasts. Each barrel I uncorked reminded me that patience and dedication yield rewards far beyond profit. Marcel, my childhood friend and now COO, became the backbone of day-to-day operations. His keen sense of logistics and loyalty provided a stabilizing force for the winery. Watching him oversee harvest schedules, supervise staff, and liaise with international distributors, I felt a profound trust that extended beyond professional respect. It was a bond forged over decades of shared history, trials, and victories. Even amidst the bustle of business, my niece's children, aged 9 and 11, visited regularly. I guided their small hands along the rows of vines, teaching them to prune shoots carefully and to respect the rhythms of the vineyard. They asked questions, curious about the grapes, the soil, and the blending techniques. Each explanation, each gentle correction was not just about winemaking, it was about passing down the values that had guided my life: patience, diligence, and an appreciation for heritage. Watching them laugh as they learned, seeing their eyes light up with wonder, I realized that the vineyard had become a living classroom, a place where lessons of resilience could thrive alongside the grapes. Trials of the past year had left scars, but they also offered clarity. Betrayal, while painful, had reinforced principles that would guide my life and business moving forward. The first lesson I learned was to trust wisely. Long-standing relationships, whether in marriage or business, do not guarantee loyalty. Julien and Claire's duplicity proved that trust must be tempered with vigilance and discernment. Today, I delegate carefully, verify diligently, and never take allegiance for granted. The second lesson was to protect your legacy. Château Dubois is more than a business. It is a tapestry of family history, dreams, and labor. By placing the vineyard in a trust and restructuring the company, I ensured that even personal betrayal could not erase decades of dedication. Protecting your heritage, whether material, intellectual, or emotional, is not selfish. It is a duty to yourself and those who come after you. Third, I learned to stay calm in the face of chaos. Julien and Claire had counted on impulsive reactions, on emotional outbursts that would leave me vulnerable. Instead, I embraced patience and observation, allowing them to reveal their plans fully before taking decisive action. In moments of conflict, measured calm is not weakness, it is strategy. Fourth, turn adversity into growth. The betrayal shook me, but it also catalyzed a renewal of vision. Restoring the stone cellar, refining our blends, mentoring young family members and staff, these actions transformed a painful experience into opportunity. Adversity is rarely comfortable, but it carries the potential to deepen wisdom, skill, and resolve. Finally, I learned the importance of resilience and self-worth. Even when those closest to me attempted to undermine my life's work, I realized that my identity, my capabilities, and my value could not be dictated by the ambitions or deceit of others. Château Dubois was a manifestation of decades of labor, but my spirit, knowledge, and judgment were equally vital assets, immune to their schemes. Life returned to a rhythm of purpose and pride. I walked among the vines each morning, inhaling the rich scent of soil and grapes, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not for court victories, nor for the ruined ambitions of Julien and Claire, but for the lessons life had delivered. Watching Marcel manage operations with skill and integrity, and seeing the next generation engage with the land, reminded me that resilience is contagious, that knowledge and values can be passed down, and that legacy is preserved not only through law but through love, care, and relentless commitment. I host tastings, teaching visitors about Bordeaux's terroir, the art of blending, and the patience required for excellence. Each pour tells a story of heritage, struggle, and triumph over deceit. The laughter of my niece's children as they help harvest grapes fills the vineyard with life, a tangible reminder that even amidst betrayal, beauty and growth endure. Château Dubois has become more than a winery. It is a symbol of survival, wisdom, and hope, proving that family drama, no matter how intense, cannot diminish a woman who knows her worth. The vineyard stands as proof that strategic foresight, patience, and resilience can turn betrayal into opportunity. Each lesson I learned, the careful calibration of trust, safeguarding of legacy, measured calm in crisis, transformation of adversity into growth, and the reinforcement of self-worth, guides me in every decision I make, both personally and professionally. These principles are not abstract. They are the backbone of Château Dubois, the foundation that protects the vineyard, the people I care for, and the integrity of my work. If my story resonates with you, I encourage you to like, share, and subscribe to follow more insights on resilience, family legacy, and the journey of a woman who refused to let betrayal define her. I'm Elise Dubois, winemaker, survivor, and guardian of my family's heritage. Château Dubois thrives not only because of the grapes we grow, but because of the lessons we have learned and the courage we cultivate, proving that no act of greed or deceit can overcome a life built with vision, patience, and unwavering self-respect.